Let's start with Mike Pompeo because he's delightfully crazy.
He's delightfully crazy. All right.
The thing about Mike Pompeo is that he's a religious Christian zealot, and he is at least close personal acquaintances with Frank Gaffney, the transition chief, the member of the transition team of Trump's cabinet, or rather Trump's administration. And Frank Gaffney is so right. So like here, so there's a great piece in Salon by Digby about Mike Pompeo and his ties to Frank Gaffney, who Gaffney himself is a radical Islamophobe, radical Christian zealot, but he is insanely right wing. So Frank Gaffney thinks that Grover Norquist is a sleeper agent of the Muslim Brotherhood, and he was sent to infiltrate the NRA. He was also banned from CPAC. He was banned from CPAC because he accused the inner leadership of CPAC of also being sleeper agents for Islamist groups.
What?
Yes. And this is the guy who once called Mike Pompeo one of the smartest people he knew. Is not equally problematic, but he has showed similar viewpoints. He says that radical Islamists are infiltrating our small town, and he has supported torture in the past.
Well, there's nothing wrong. What's wrong with a little bit of torture between friends, right?
If her was consenting to it, nothing, right? But no. But so and this is the sticking point for a lot of people. So what they say, in front of the hearings, he said specifically that, well, I would never go against the law in my position as CIA head of CIA. However, when talking about the Bush administration's torture, he is quoted as saying, well, whatever they did was legal because they were not brought up on charges. If it were illegal, they would have been prosecuted under the law. And those people who were doing the quote unquote enhanced interrogation were patriots. So basically he, has framed this question of torture as, well, as long as it's not legal because it was not prosecuted and they're not torturers, they're patriots. And how dare you question them because they're fighting this holy war with, Islamists. And from that position, I think that he really lays out why it's so problematic that President Obama did not, right? That it sort of gives this kind of precedent out there that, well, if it were actually illegal, the Democratic president would have prosecuted based on it, and it gives this sort of not. No, go ahead.
Now, so say what? So what does it say? So we've laid this out. You've laid this out pretty well about Pompeo. What does this say that high rank that various Democrats, including the very progressive leader of the revolution, Chuck Schumer, voted for him, right? Like voted to go ahead for his confirmation.
I don't know. So I've heard based on it. Tim Kaine also voted for him. And a lot of this is really just that the Senate hearings and I feel as we will see as basically everyone gets confirmed, right? So I think that there is basically very little chance that the majority, if not the entirety of Trump's cabinet picks will be confirmed. These Senate committees are indicative of a trend especially within the Democratic Party, of this performative progressivism, right? They come out at these hearings and they lambast these people. They drag them in front of like the media. They ask them these like embarrassing questions about grizzly bears and guns in classrooms, and then they confirm. Them. Anyway.
But she did actually answer, and she shouldn't have.
She should have answered. Mike Pompeo is also in favor of expanding the surveillance state, and it's just these things. And you have Chuck Schumer, and Chuck Schumer is the war hawk, but they have these things, and it reveals Democrats for what they are, which is they're trying to create enemies, right? Is like I feel like that's what's going on right now. Like they're saying, I look forward to fighting with you for 8 years. I look forward to guaranteeing my seat by continuing to oppose you, even as you get everything you want through.
Right.
And we see this a lot, right? And I mean the biggest. I don't want to drag Elizabeth Warren out too early, but Elizabeth Warren is known for doing this with members of the bank community. She's known for bringing them in front of these committees, having these big explosive events where everyone gets behind her, and then nothing ever occurs. Like Wells Fargo, like nothing happens.
Yeah, I mean, like everyone's talking about the resistance and this, that, and the other, and call and object and all this other stuff. But like, what point does any of that make if the senators are just going, the senators who we're supposed to be relying upon are just going to go ahead and just fold anyway? Like to read senators saying things like, "Well, I don't really agree with him, but," or "I think he doesn't understand the legal precedent of this, but." You're saying that the potential head of the CIA does not understand the legal precepts involved with deciding or making determinations about whether they can compile dossiers and other information about American citizens, but we're going to go ahead and make him the head of the CIA anyway? That doesn't make any sense. Just like, I mean, we'll get to Ben Carson, but I don't know what Democrats are doing, but this being nice and giving Republicans their way and letting things play as they may, that is a very dangerous gamble that has yet to yield results. They've done this time and time again over the last several years, and it doesn't yield results. It leaves us in a situation where we have a Congress, House and Senate, that is predominantly run by Republicans. Republicans in a House can pass through whatever types of nonsense and crap they want to, for the most part, without really real opposition for the Democrats. And because of rule changes by Harry Reid, the Senate can do the same thing essentially. So I'm not very clear on what's going on, and why. I'm not that I'm not clear. It's just that, this beating our head on the wall and trying to, get Democrats to do the right thing and trying to infiltrate and take things over, like it's a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, you do need people in these seats who can actually be in a position to ask these questions and to challenge these candidates for these cabinet level positions, right? But on the flip side, what does it matter when it seems like the party line seems to be, okay, we're going to put up a good show at a fight, but we're not really going to fight for real? Like, it just doesn't make sense.
But there's a lot of ways to look at it, right? So the first way, the way I laid out before, which is that they're trying to create their own enemies. That the Democratic Party, Senate, House, at varying degrees, is not very progressive, not very on the left. And so they create their own enemies, the same way the Clinton campaign tried to get these Pied Piper candidates, so that they can make themselves seem more progressive. They can create a more evil threat out there to coalesce, their base, coalesce their voting bloc around and get continued support. Because without your Frank Gaffneys, without your Mike Pompeos, without your your Prices, your Elaine Chow's, your DeVoses, without these people, the Democratic Party, from an objective standpoint, looks incredibly conservative. So they need to elevate these right-wing voices so that by comparison, they can seem to the left. They can have someone to be to the left too. What that ends up doing is that it constantly shifts off over that Overton window, right? It just does that by necessity. The other way to look at it is this. Well, I mean, everybody makes them look stupid, but always this. The Democratic Party at its highest levels, and also, on the baseline, some of the baseline, liberals, they think that they view compromise as inherently virtuous. That just the nature of compromising and coming to a conclusion that seems reasonable and letting people sort of have their way, even after they go through this rigmarole, is like compromise in all of its forms, no matter what, it's always virtuous. And finally, I would say there's this mentality that you can hold people's feet to the fire after they're in position. And that was what they were promoting throughout the general election too. Vote for Clinton, hold their feet to the fire after. So there is this sort of notion that, we'll hold these people's feet to the fire. Well, he's in favor of torture. And if we're going to, install him. And if he tries to torture people, then we'll stop him. It's like, well, why not stop him now? Why not stop him here? And the answer seems to be, because that's not really political. Obstinance is not mature, and we don't want to seem immature by being obstinate. Right. So we're going to compromise so we seem mature, even if that compromise involves basically installing a torturer, or rather, quote unquote, patriot. And no matter how you view it, they're disingenuous. The Democratic Party is duplicitous, right? They come out with these big shows of like, oh, look how progressive we are. Grizzly bears, and Cory Booker wears pink scarves, and, Wall Street's bad, kind of, sometimes, and we're going to have half, X, Y, and Z. And but then they don't do anything.
Absolutely. I mean, we're they send letters and they they try
and
to
it helps them raise money too.
Right, it does. I need to probably actually go back on the fundraising list just so I can have them to laugh and talk about, because I remember seeing while we were in DC, people were talking about the horrible DNC fundraising emails they were getting, and I'm like, oh man, someone needs to screenshot it for me because I'm not on I removed myself from all those lists and stuff. But yeah, so it's like, let's move on to Ben Carson. Of course, obviously, Ben Carson got voted out of committee. That means that he's moving on to a full Senate vote.